Coming up. What the f? And now. Wow, what an ending. I just hope this video doesn't piss everyone off. After years of making anime-only video essays, I can finally rest from avoiding spoilers. The time has come to deeply upset everyone who commented,
"You clearly understand Attack on Titan. You're gonna love the ending."
and piss off everyone that's like,
Wait till you see all these ideas and characters get betrayed.
if you're just here for an abridged thought, the ending was pretty good. If you're interested in elaboration from an anime only that got super heavy into the deep symbolism shit, I'm gonna go major plot point by major plot point, giving my thoughts on how things wound up and whether or not they make sense to me as someone that spent way too much fucking time on this series. And I also just want to add, these are my initial thoughts. I started writing this video immediately after the episode ended, so my views may change with time for better or worse, but these are my initial takeaways. So, here we go. This not only didn't feel out of place to me, but I feel like it was the zenith point, symbolically at least, of the whole series. I was deeply moved by it. This scene was the conclusion to the prose that Kenny introduced, right? We're all drunk on something, as our mere being here just to one day die, it's too painful for any animal to face, and what holds weight in the face of that reality is what this scene answers for us, and I think it answers it very astutely. If this was any other character, not Zeke, I would agree with the argument, oh, all it took was a fucking leaf to change this guy's mind, but Zeke's worldview has already been extensively challenged, right? Things he thought he knew turned out to be bullshit, and I know this is a cop-out on my part, but I would really love to just make a dedicated video on this. I think there were a lot of hints pointing both the audience and Zeke in this direction. Too many to get into right now. Even if none of that checks out for you, fucking look at this guy, he's a hippie. If anyone was gonna buy into the Zen Memento Mori shit, it was gonna be him. I don't want, like, a paths guidebook that lays everything out. The paths are supposed to be this great big mystery that'll never be fully understood, but it's never explained in a practical way how Zeke brought a bunch of characters back to life in the real world. That is a pretty fucking huge aspect to just gloss over. And they did. They explained the paths connect all Eldians, as in the paths death and time don't exist, but that's not enough for me, man. What exactly brought these people back here and now? Was it a hidden power of royal blood? This opens up so many questions that completely change the way we understand time and the paths, and they just did it. It almost distracted me from the rest of the episode. I kept waiting for them to explain how the fuck these dead characters came back to life, and they just never did. Or I missed it, but I usually don't miss shit like that. This wasn't a deal breaker. It didn't even come close to like ruining the episode or anything, but God, dude, that is such a huge aspect of the story that we're never getting an explanation of. Beautiful. I thought how this sequence was shown was piss poor, to be honest. This was supposedly Jean and Connie's death scenes, like we were meant to believe it was. No reaction shots, we didn't even really get a good look at them as Titans. It happened way too fucking quick, and we moved on way too quick. If you're really doing the cheap death fake out, make it convincing. Actually rip my heart out for a second. We just saw them in quick blink and you'll miss it cuts. Holy shit. This was a beautiful conclusion to the whole those who can't abandon everything can't change anything moral. Self-sacrifice, disillusionment with the comfortable, with everything we love, it's been the foundation of discovery in Attack on Titan since its inception. And in real life, since our inception. It's beautiful. I'll expand more on this later. My thoughts did change a little bit as more info's added later on, but as it stands at this point in the episode, just an appropriate, wonderful conclusion to Eren's character. What the fuck? I get that later they explain Ymir had to see that you can still love someone and let them go, but you couldn't have had Mikasa fall to her knees holding his head. This crossed from symbolic to just strange, man. This threw me off. Where'd the worm go? I guess it makes sense it would have died once its host died, but we definitely could have used a scene of it, like, shriveling up. I don't know, having what is technically the main antagonist of the series just kind of disappearing off frame, that seemed odd to me. Here's the big one, and I've got mixed feelings. I finally understand all the not for 10 years at least jokes I've been seeing, so we're going to go scene by scene, and I'm going to give my thoughts for each one. The first scene where Eren says he was trying to make parody the heroes, it kind of seemed like a lie to me. Not a lie, but like a little fabricated, and we do come to realize Eren did actually have more sinister intentions. Appropriate for the story. From the very beginning, Attack on Titan's main idea was that the things we love, the things we depend upon, those are the things that cage us, that take parts of us, that ultimately kill us. The walls, our hopes, our dreams, our illusions. In like practical terms, the extremity of the abuse that she was undergoing here is far more than that of somebody choosing to live inside of walls, but it's the same germ, right? The same biological need within us, just taken to a point of insanity. Walls grant you convenience. Fritz granted Ymir, a lonely, miserable girl, some bastardized level of connection. We trade off a part of ourselves to our walls, and of course we know what Fritz took from Ymir. Again, I understand why someone wouldn't see the sense in this, because it's not a sensical relationship, but I think that's the point. It's the same germ, the same basic condition that we all undergo, and before you scoff at this, it's worth asking yourself why some people shoot heroin into their arm knowing it's killing them. For 2,000 years, this girl was trapped by love, and for months, for years, a man can be trapped by heroin or alcohol or a religion. We're all drunk on something, some delusion like Kenny explained, and Ymir picked the only person in her life that as a slave she had access to. It is insane, but the insanity is born of the same need that we all have. The things we love are often what kill us. And as Mikasa shows Ymir, we can love something, but do what we have to do to stop it from killing us. Like I explained, it made sense Mikasa had to be the one to kill Eren symbolically, but this practical reason in the story, it actually kind of seemed wishy-washy to me. Hear me out. Everything in the series, everyone born, every memory shared, every Titan fought, every character death, was so that Ymir could see a girl kill a man she loved. Sure, it's an oversimplification, I can already hear you typing, but everything, according to Eren, was a predetermined path that Ymir set in motion so she'd get to experience an inspiration of sacrifice. It checks out, like it's not a plot hole, but it just feels like it devalues what we went through with these characters. You know, I expect this might be something that the more I think about, the more I'll get comfortable with it, but right now, like, I heard Eren say that, and I kind of went, really? So not a plot hole, not anything narratively wrong with Isayama's decision, but it just didn't feel right. Maybe it will the more I think about it. And this is another thing, like my previous point, that makes sense symbolically, but did kind of leave me scratching my head in the practical application part. Isayama went deep with this series. He did something with anime that no one else has. And he played with these archetypes right up until the end. Eren's character arc wasn't an arc. It was a circle, a Ouroboros, like a snake eating its own tail, which is bold, man. It's impressive, it's innovative, but for me personally, this one part just did not land. I will admit, I was excited to hear this part because I unknowingly called it in a previous video. Eren and the Smiling Titan, they're the same character. And if you think I'm LARPing about being an anime only, I said this shit before the manga came out. Of course, I meant it metaphorically, and to a degree, Isayama meant it metaphorically, but when these archetypes take shape in raw form in a series that has hidden them so cleverly and subtly, it's disjointing. It felt like Isayama showing his hand when he's so cleverly hidden it the whole time. I said I was going to piss everyone off with this. Here's something to keep in mind, and this occurred to me as I watched it. This isn't like after-the-fact coping. Maybe it was real-time coping, but like as an isolated scene, Eren pounding his fists and crying is cringy as fuck, but the context that this is in, This is a 19-year-old kid about to die. And remember, he didn't have his little spurg out in front of Mikasa. He kept it together for her, and I assume everyone else he visited. I'm imagining if he did this in front of her, I would have hated the scene, but he kept it together. Like, imagine right before she goes to cut his head off, he goes, "No, wait, I don't want this." That would have been fucking terrible. And he tried to keep it together for Armin, and almost did until he rocked his shit. No 19-year-old kid wants to be forgotten about. It feels inappropriate to call all the cold, calculated, murderous shit he did just an act, just pretending. That's not really the word for it. It's acting, but less so like a theatrical play and more so the acting we do when we're faced with significant conflict in real life. Because even if the way you behave is coming from a sincere place, the tough you with your fists balled, I mean, that's not entirely you. Right? We put on tough faces when the situation demands it. And there were very sincere parts of him that came out in his facade. He admitted he really wanted to trample the world. That wasn't an act. Eren was keeping up that sincere venom with a tough facade until Armin rocked his shit. And then, if Eren's gonna pout in front of anyone, why not make it his best friend that he knows? If anyone will understand, it'll be him. On the flip side, it was hard to watch, but I still find it nuts that this absolutely killed the series for some people. You don't think Eren was a fucking cold-blooded killer who was also a 19-year-old kid who just wished he wasn't condemned and could live his life cozied up with Mikasa? That doesn't seem like a crazy idea to me. I didn't see an annihilation of a character. I saw an expansion of a character. I saw a scared kid that didn't want to walk the path that he had to, but who, after some resistance, did follow until the end. What in this little spurg out contradicted his character? Wanting to flatten the world, recognizing the evil of that, trying to resist it, and ultimately not being able to. And then in his sin, rationalizing it as a way to protect parody. And then, since all else has failed, going through with the rumbling and even relishing in parts of it. Explain to me which one of those bullet points was something Eren would not do. If you don't think Eren would have had any apprehensions, remember when he attacked Liberio? He admitted since sleeping under the enemy's roof, he found things weren't black and white, that there were good people and bad people. But upon hearing the declaration of war, he realized the future was set in stone, and then he reserved himself to slaughtering thousands without a second thought. Does this look like the face of someone totally enjoying themselves? And then remember his breakdown in front of Ramsay. This is a kid with guilt. This is a kid torn up about what he is. Attack on Titan is an advanced lesson in archetypes. And what are archetypes? They're prevailing symbols and themes throughout time, no matter the geography, time period, or individual artist. And they're psychological archetypes, historical archetypes. This conclusion, as many have pointed out, illustrates that impersonal trudging forward of these archetypes, unyielding to anyone or anything. And it didn't delegitimize the story and the sacrifices up until this point, it strengthened them. Because like Armin explains to Zeke in the Paths, what matters is what is fucking here. Eren's mind always existed in the past and in the future. Armin's was in the present. The fact the sun is going to explode in however many billion years doesn't even come close to siphoning out the warmth of a night in with the love of your life or the enigmatic joy of having a catch with your father. These things all mattered because they were. They existed. The fact the sun sets does not eliminate the reality that there was a sun in the sky several hours ago. And so the archetypes live on, the generational trauma is passed on, but despite this, Armin, Mikasa, and the rest of the series survivors loved and lived anyway. However, Reiner sniffing that letter was nuts. It shocked me so badly it took me 5 days to recoup and finally edit this video. None of my complaints thus far have been deal breakers. Everything considered up until this point, it's still masterpiece status. There's just one thing that actually stained this ending for me. It's what turned it from masterpiece to just really good for me. Part of the magic of Attack on Titan was the weight in its consequences. There were established rules in this universe, and if they weren't followed, or even if you did follow them and just got unlucky, you died. What made Attack on Titan so brutal, so profoundly painful, was that people we cared about could and did meet grisly ends. Where were the consequences? How did Jean, Reiner, Annie, Peak, all of them, how did no one die during this? Not every series has to have this level of unapologetic verisimilitude, but Attack on Titan, up until this finale, had been that way. You're telling me this is the same show that when one unfamiliar obstacle was encountered, the female Titan, a whole squad of highly trained, highly skilled scouts were ruthlessly brutalized. And like what happened with Erwin, literally like 50 feet from the goal he'd been aiming at since his youth, and the series kills him. You mean in that series, not one of the Alliance dies during the Battle of Heaven and Earth?
But the Alliance is more familiar with Titan shifters. They're more adaptable.
They're not familiar with thousands of them showing up all at once with fucking bows and arrows and shit. Nothing about this situation is familiar.
Eren was protecting them. He was just delaying the Alliance long enough for things to line up how they had to.
No, he wasn't. He admitted it himself. Sasha died, Hanji died, Eren was powerless to protect his friends. The stakes were real.
How can you say there are no consequences when Eren died?
That is a huge moment and a huge death, but ultimately, that was the Alliance's goal. Stopping the rumbling, like Levi said, required Eren dying. One of the most fundamental tenets of storytelling is that your characters have to lose something in the pursuit of a goal or milestone. Otherwise, things are just happening for your characters. This group of people, granted with some pain, reached their goal with no internal casualties in a show whose trademark was killing beloved characters in the pursuit of goals. Go back to season 3. How much more unearned would the basement reveal have been if Erwin survived?
Ah, but that was the point. You expected everyone to die, and Isayama subverted your expectations. You wanted grief porn, and Isayama gave you something better.
The subversion of expectations works as long as those subversions don't seismically toss every rule of the fictional universe out the window. Like Flock surviving the charge over Erwin. That's a subversion of an expectation that doesn't betray the fundamental rules of the universe that they were in. I fell in love with Attack on Titan because it scared the shit out of me. Anyone could die at any time. Characters I loved bit the dust, and it hurt me, but I still liked it because it was a level of honest storytelling I'd never seen in anime. I've seen multiple anime, and I gotta come clean here, man. I actually don't really like anime. I don't know what the hell I'm doing with this channel after I'm done with the Attack on Titan stuff. Attack on Titan won over an anime hater. It's been the only one that I can stomach. So whether or not you feel like there are plot holes, whether or not you think Eren's character arc was assassinated, how much more impactful would the ending have been if Jean, Connie, Reiner, one of them or all of them died in the pursuit of saving the world? Like, I get we're moving into headcanon territory here, but imagine all those mindless titans just weathered away into steam. Remember, humans aren't literally at the nape of mindless titans, they're absorbed. Imagine the link to the paths is severed, Eren dies, and we watch the bastardized bodies of the characters we know and love crumble and fall. All of these characters had completed arcs. They fulfilled their duties. And would you want this? No, surely not. I wouldn't either, but it would have left a greater impact on us and made everything that followed feel so much more earned. The head in Mikas's arms would have required the sacrifice of life. It would have felt so much heavier. If you absolutely despise the ending and you've listened to this whole thing, gritting your teeth, I've got a favor to ask. Take 1 second and imagine Isayama went as hard on these characters as he went on everyone else. Imagine they paid the price for going against the interest of parody and barely scraped by, suffering losses that outweighed the number of survivors. Jean and Connie, dead per the worm. Reiner, who heroically gave his life in the explosion and died not knowing how things would end up. Fulfilling the cycle Marcel started in his sacrifice. Sit on that for a second and let me know. I'm genuinely curious. Would you still hate it as much? Luck never existed, or only existed in small fragmented bits in Attack on Titan until like 2 episodes ago. It felt like a total tonal betrayal of every rule in the Attack on Titan universe. And that is my greatest gripe. Despite this, if you're still with me, I really did think the ending was good. I've done a lot of complaining. Clearly, there were many points I thought needed some extra love, but narratively, symbolically, Isayama ended this series very well. A couple blemishes in my eyes were not enough to completely pull me away from the story that I fell in love with. No one tells stories like Isayama, and no one ever will. the good parts greatly outweighed the bad for me, even if I didn't rant about them as much. A lot of this I didn't see coming, and in retrospect, all make a lot of sense for the story. I have turned everyone against me with this one. I loved and was so impressed by the story from the beginning until the end. How it was told in the final episode did miss a couple marks for me, but it didn't even come close to ruining the story. So to the ending haters, I'm sorry I wasn't your guy. And to the people that thought I'd be in love with the ending, I'm sorry too. With all that said, I'm in the middle of the writing process of my next huge video. It's just taken so long because I started a full-time job and moved out and shit, so it's had to be on the back burner for a little. Every couple days I add a little more to it. I wish I could give like a rough schedule, but a double move and a new job, I can only give so much of myself to this, so it's just a matter of working out the time to say it. Thank you for hanging with me to this point. I sincerely want to hear your views on the ending, so let me know below. Let me know I didn't understand the story, and I'll catch you in the next one.